Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another live edition of Mic'd Up Sports, the show that goes in depth with the people who build our sports community. And joining me is Chantelle Anderson. If the name sounds familiar, she was the second overall pick in the 2003 WNBA Draft, 2002 SEC Co-Player of the Year while she was playing for the Vanderbilt Commodores. These days, you can find her as a speaker, coach, and as you were telling me, 18 different things. That seems like the life of a professional athlete. Once they transition away from sports, they dive into about 18, 19, 20 different things in their career. So I imagine, Chantelle, your resume is pretty lengthy with all of the avenues you have explored.
Well, thank you, Mike, for having me on here. I'm excited for our conversation. And yeah, I have done several things. I think as athletes, we find that one thing that we want to do very early in life. So we don't have to go through the whole period that everyone else goes through of like, what do I want to do with my life? What do I want to be when I grow up? We know from a very young age what we want to be when we grow up. And for those of us who are blessed enough to end up actually doing it, we kind of have to, after we are done with basketball or towards the end of our career, we still have to go through that process of what do I want to be when I grow up? We just do it a lot later because we discovered our first thing already. So yeah, I have bounced around since then, but yeah, it's been fun, and I've been blessed enough to find some success in different areas, and now I love what I'm doing. So.
Chantelle, I'm curious, since you had a lengthy basketball career, do you remember the first moment that attracted you to the sport, that first itch?
The first itch, honestly, no, because I didn't start out liking basketball. My dad played basketball, and so he made me play it. Like he just put us in sports. Plus I was always tall, like I was tall. And so I started out playing soccer, actually, indoor soccer. And then we got into basketball, playing basketball for the YMCA. So that's how I got started in 7th grade. So it's relatively late for people in general. And yeah, I didn't really like it until probably like freshman year. I started to like it. And then sophomore year was when I really fell in love with it in high school.
Hearing that, it reminds me of LaChina Robinson, a fellow basketball player who I think played around the same time you did in college. It took her a little while to embrace the sport as well.
Yeah.
And you know what? You started as a 7th grader and made it work. So it's like that, as the old saying goes, it's never too late for a first.
Yeah, I know, right?
But as you were growing up, you mentioned your height. Your listed height is 6'6", which is up there. Now, I'm used to looking up because I covered the WNBA for 10 years. I covered college, high school. So, that doesn't faze me.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, how long did it take for you to become comfortable with yourself? Because I imagine you were among the tallest in your class all the way through college. Not many women get to be 6 feet, let alone 6'6".
Yeah, for sure. I was always tall. I remember in 2nd grade, like just elementary school, I was always in the back row with all the boys, and I was still taller than them. I went into the 8th grade 6 feet. This was my biggest growth spurt. I started the 8th grade 6 feet tall, so I was already tall in 8th grade. But that year I grew 3 inches. And so I was 6'3" by the end of my 8th grade year. That summer, I grew another inch. So I started out high school as 6'4". And I was like, what the heck? Like, this is awful. I was so, I was gangly and awkward and uncoordinated because my coordination hadn't caught up with my body yet. I used to wake up all the time with growing pains in my knees, like crying. And I was bullied a lot for being tall. I was called all kind of different names for being tall. And I also wore glasses that like took up my whole face. And I didn't know how to do my hair. I was not considered like one of the pretty girls or anything like that. So I had a lot going on. But I think, basketball really helped me embrace my height, because especially when I started playing with the Oregon City girls basketball team. Their AAU team was the #1 AAU team in the country at that time under Brad Smith and Carl Tinsley. And they had players like Ashley Smith, Lindsay Yamasaki, Brianne Meharry. Like those were their kind of big three, And so I didn't go to Oregon City, but I played on their AAU team. And for the first time, I was around like amazing, beautiful, powerful women who also like killed it on the basketball court. And I was like, yo, this is dope. Like you guys are amazing. And I literally wanted to be Lindsay Yamasaki. And she was 6'3". So that was pretty cool. And then I also met Lisa Leslie, and Lisa was amazing because she's tall, she's Black, she's a baller, she's gorgeous, she was modeling, she was doing all these things, and I was like, wow, if I can look like me and be beautiful and be feminine and be amazing, because she looks like her and she's all of these things. And so that really, really helped my confidence as far as basketball and as far as being tall.
In my head, I'm thinking, for all those people who bullied you over your height and what you've accomplished since then, not just in basketball, but you've done TED Talks, you get a lot of speaking engagements. I'm thinking, who's laughing now?
Well, yeah, I try not to think about that, but yeah, I've had a few interesting conversations with those people. At the end of the day, kids are kids, and we're all going through things. I'm sure I said really mean things to people when I was getting mean things done to me. So, at the end of the day, kids are products of their environment. We're all mean sometimes, so we just got to deal with it.
Absolutely. And that comment was more in jest, because obviously, as you said,
I'm sure it was.
And I get what you're saying. When you're little, like everyone likes to make a big deal out of these differences. And then as you get older, it's like, it's like, oh, so what? You're 6'6".
Right.
That doesn't change what people think of you. And I don't think that has been a prerequisite for all of the work you've been able to find since you retired. But something I did want to ask, a lot of taller athletes I've had on my podcast series, they speak to this. Growing up, the toughest thing was finding clothes and shoes that would fit. What was your experience as far as apparel, footwear, all of that?
Oh, absolutely. That's facts. Like being so tall and being like, I'm thin. And so I could never find like things that fit me in the waist, but then were long enough ever. Like pants were so hard to find. I used to wear baggy guy pants that were just too big, or they just too short, didn't fit. There are a lot more tall options now, but when I was growing up, there weren't as many at all. So that was hard. And then shoes, yeah, it was difficult to find shoes other than tennis shoes. And then I could never find shoes in all the cute girl colors, quote unquote, like those weren't there. They weren't there. And so, yeah, dressing was definitely a struggle.
I read somewhere that most manufacturers, although it's getting better now, they would stop I think after size 10. So I can only imagine that was your struggle. You had to go a few notches higher.
Yeah, I wear size 12. So that was, so many of the cute shoes stop at size 10. And I'm like, can't do it. Amen. I still, even these days, shoes are the hardest. Like I buy shoes at Nordstrom's Rack, or, there are a few other tall options, but Yeah.
You mentioned as you took up AAU, getting the chance to meet Lisa Leslie, and going off that, once you started to embrace basketball and go all in with it, who are the idols in the sport of basketball that you looked up to? And this can be anyone.
Yeah. Well, Lisa was always, the idol. Lisa was doing everything that I wanted to do, and she was everything that I wanted to be. So first and foremost, it was definitely Lisa. But that whole entire dream team of women, it was Natalie, it was Dawn, it was Cheryl, man, it was just all of them. I had so many pictures on my wall of that Olympic team. I think it was what was it? The 98 Olympic team, or
1996.
96. Yeah, the 96 Olympic team. Like, that team, they were plastered on my walls as a high schooler. So yeah, for sure.
Staley, I think Rebecca Lobo was a part of that group.
Yeah.
And there were a few others. It's a bit vague because I was 9 years old in the 96 Olympics, and
well,
women's sports, there wasn't a women's pro league, at least at the exposure level of the WNBA. That 96 run is what started it.
Yeah, it was announced that it was going to be coming.
And they're going to have their 25th year. So that's not too bad for a league that so many people said would dissolve in such a short amount of time. I guess you get used to that, though, by a certain point. I'm wondering, though, how surreal was it when you got to go up against Lisa Leslie for the first time when you got to the WNBA? And we'll work our way to that, but I just wanted to hear your take, because here's this woman you looked up to that helped you become comfortable with your body, with your athleticism, and now you have to try to stop her in the post.
I know, right? Yeah, I remember rookie year in Sacramento. I got on the court and I was guarding Lisa, and it's just this moment where you look over and you're like, yo, you're Lisa Leslie. Like, and then you have that moment, it's just star striking. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm guarding Lisa. And then she's like elbowing you and scoring on you. You're like, dang it.
and you're like, all right, fun's over.
Right. Suck it up, Chantelle. Like, get out of your head. But there was definitely that moment of, oh my gosh, you were on my wall.
Did you ever get the chance to share any stories? I know, like, post-game, they do the handshake and everything, but maybe after you were done or after a game, did you have a chance to go up and say, you were on my wall?
Yeah, we did have a conversation at NBA All-Star one time in the bathroom. I think it was. We were just we were both like in the mirror primping, and I just told her thank you for everything she did for the sport, and specifically for being a great role model for me. And so it was a short conversation, but I just told her thank you.
Do you remember what she said in that bathroom conversation? that is an amusing story. I mean, if you write a memoir or something, it's like, yeah, I got to have a conversation with my idol while we're prepping in the bathroom.
She was very gracious, and she was just like, thank you so much. And, I know your future is going to be bright, and, thank you for sharing that. So she was gracious.
And that is something I've picked up on over the years, covering the WNBA as long as I have. There's a lot of mutual respect. Sometimes there are some rivalries, as we've seen play out, but more often than not, teams that fans love to hate. For example, I live in Minnesota, so I'm on the Lynx beat. Phoenix and LA are the two teams they love to hate because of the rivalries, but there's some moments in the locker room where they're all sharing laughs after the game. So there is that mutual sisterhood that I don't think we often get to see if you're just going to a game and then head home.
Yeah, for sure.
But before you got there, you were a standout athlete at Hudson's Bay High School in this city known as Vancouver, Washington, not to be confused with Vancouver, British Columbia. When did you get your first offer? How many offers did you receive? And as you were making your way through, when did you sense that your interest in basketball could get you places?
Um, I actually remember my first, well, it wasn't my first offer. It was my first recruiting letter that I remember. And it was the summer after, the summer before my ninth grade year. So I had just started playing with Oregon City. And so Oregon City was, like I said, the number one team in the country at that time. And so we played the circuit of the AAU circuit that summer. And we went to Nike Nationals and just all the big tournaments. And so I was really excited. And Brad Smith, before, when he asked me to be on the team, he had told me, he said, basketball will change your life. And I never knew how or what that looked like because I didn't know. I was just getting introduced to high level girls basketball at the time. I had no idea, but people were telling me like, no, it'll pay for your college. And I was like, really? Okay, well, in that case, let's do it. And so we played the circuit that summer. And then my first recruiting letter ever was from Duke University. And I'll never forget because I got it and I started running around the house like, oh my gosh, like, I was like, I got a letter. And it wasn't even like, it was a typed out letter. It wasn't handwritten. It wasn't like anything that really they were pursuing me. They probably sent me the letter because I was a 6'6" incoming freshman. Like that's why it wasn't because I was good. But from then, it escalated. And by the peak of my recruiting period, I was just getting bags and bags of letters every week, like hundreds of letters every week, to the point where I stopped, like I learned how to recognize them and I stopped opening any of them that weren't handwritten. And then I narrowed it down pretty quickly to my 5 and was like, sorry, because it was just overwhelming. So.
And we didn't have social media. When you said how you were running around the room and got your first offer from Duke, now so many players are tweeting their offers. I'm not sure what to make of it. There's a part of me that's going, well, an offer is not a commitment, but hey,
Yeah.
Kids, they understand they got to brand themselves. So whatever you make of it. Oh, go ahead.
Well, it wasn't an offer. It was like literally just a letter.
Okay.
But I honestly don't remember my offers or anything like that. I remember what it meant. And I remember getting them, but I couldn't give you a number on that one or, when my first one was.
Understandable, since you had hundreds of them by the time folks heard about you. So I think you have a reasonable explanation. I'm thinking, do you have to get a P.O. box to sort all that mail? and how relieving was it when you were done and they stopped sending you all that stuff?
It was great. And not to sound ungrateful, like
right. We're having fun here.
Grateful, obviously, but it was definitely overwhelming. So I can only imagine how these kids feel with social media these days and just all of the noise. I was overwhelmed, and it was just letters. I can't imagine how they feel.
Yeah, back then we were just happy for AOL.
That part.
But yeah, we're having a little fun, of course, because just about every player is grateful to be considered like yourself.
Yeah.
And what led you to settle on Vanderbilt? Because that was a school, you certainly made the most of it when you got there. But as you were growing up, you mentioned Lisa Leslie, and at the time, Tennessee and UConn were the big names in women's basketball. But you left a mark at Vanderbilt. What led you, out of all the schools that were reaching out in hopes of adding you to their program, how did Vanderbilt stand out?
Yeah. Well, I narrowed down my final five relatively quickly, and it was Vanderbilt, Duke, Stanford, UCLA, and Florida. And those were, they were academic schools. Florida was the first one to go because it wasn't like the notable academic school that the other four were, because academics was very, very important to me. But I liked Florida because of the coaches and the recruiting that they did. And so, and then UCLA was the next to go because I was crazy in high school and I knew that I might go to LA and not graduate. There was way too much in LA to distract me from school and basketball. So I was like, yeah, I might not make it. So I crossed out LA, and then so Stanford, Vandy, and Duke. And the coaching staff at Vanderbilt really won me over. Coach Foster, I trusted him. And then my AAU coach, Brad Smith, actually ended up going there. So they recruited his daughter, and his daughter, the point guard of my AAU team, went to Vanderbilt. And so I was like, okay, I already know somebody there. And then her dad ended up going to Vanderbilt as an assistant coach, I think to help Ashley that year, thinking of like everything that was going on. But it definitely did help in the recruiting process of me. And so, I already trusted Coach Foster. And then there was Brad Smith, and he was, the guy who had got me into high level basketball, giving me my first start. So yeah, the coaching staff just won me over. And then when I went on my official visit, it just felt like home. I fell in love with the arena. I loved the campus. I loved everything about it. And at that point, I was just ready to get the process over with, honestly. And so I was just like, you know what? I love it here. I already know this is where I want to go. So let me just choose this.
When you brought up LA, I laugh because I can attest to what you're saying. I took a visit there a few years ago for the 2016 WNBA finals, the first time the Lynx and Sparks played each other. And I was impressed that I found the first shop that made a good churro. But obviously, there's a lot more in LA to do and to see. So I can understand why you would be hesitant. Although,
there's
I take it you've been to LA a few times and have managed to get through it without too many distractions.
Yeah, no, I lived in LA. I just recently moved to San Diego about 5 months ago. But before that, I lived in LA for 2.5 years. And I would always joke, I was like, God knew not to bring me here before I was grown. Because listen, there's a lot going on in LA. But yeah, no, I was grateful that I had that, wherewithal at that age to be like, nah, Chantelle, don't do that. The other thing that I forgot to mention was the SEC also. I loved the idea. I was very finesse. I was a finesse player. I was kind of soft. And I wanted to, I knew I wanted to go pro. And so I knew that I needed a conference that would force me to be more physical and to get stronger. At that point, what is now the Pac-12 was the Pac-10. The Pac-10 was kind of known for its finesse, pretty basketball. And I was that kind of player. And I was like, if I want to play in the league, like I need a league that's going to toughen me up a little bit. And so the SEC was gritty and athletic and physical and tough. And so it just fit where I wanted to go.
And at that point, a lot of history too. We mentioned Tennessee earlier. You also spoke of Florida being a finalist. That's where Delisha Milton-Jones went. She was a Wade Trophy winner her senior year, a few years before you joined, but they had a lengthy history and still do. LSU, they were still in the works, I think, before Sylvia Fowles and Simone Augustus got there. But yeah, when Vanderbilt being in the SEC, so you got to play Tennessee, you got to play some of the top tier programs.
Yep.
And I'd say that worked out for you. And at Vanderbilt, it really worked out for you.
Yeah.
You left as the school's all-time leading scorer, which I think is impressive. To do it in college, to get 1,000 or 2,000 points, because the level of competition is much higher than in high school. And that's not to say those milestones in high school aren't worthy of distinction, because what you put in as a student athlete at Hudson's Bay helped you get that opportunity to play on a scholarship at Vanderbilt. But when you got there for the first time and got the chance to suit up and play, and I have a feeling you knew you were going to get significant opportunities to showcase your skills at Vanderbilt. What was that feeling like?
Getting the opportunity to play. Well, when they were, I actually started by accident my freshman year. I don't know if I was going to start or not from the get-go, but our starting center actually hurt herself in a pickup game. And so we didn't have another starting center. And so I got the opportunity maybe a little earlier than I was ready for, but I knew what I wanted to be when I got to Vanderbilt. You know, I remember Coach Foster and I were standing in the gym before I had ever played a practice, before I had ever played a game. We were looking up at the jerseys hanging from the rafters. And at that point, Wendy Schulten's, the number 40 jersey, was the only women's jersey that was up there. And I said, and she was at that time the all-time leading scorer. And I said, I want to break her record. And Coach Foster looked at me and he said, okay, if you're willing to work for it, I'll help you. And I never forgot that it was like a lot of our conversations, short, sweet, to the point. And he was honest with me and I was honest with him. And for the rest of my college career, I chased that goal, and we worked together for as long as he was my coach, him and Coach Gaudette and our other coaches. And so, you know, I was very grateful for the opportunity to get to play at Vanderbilt. And while I did start probably a little earlier than I was ready for, and maybe even before we all thought I was, we did always know what the goal was. And we always knew what I came there to be and to do. So.
As Bob Ross would always say in his show, we don't have mistakes, just happy accidents. And so you starting turned into this happy accident that led to an illustrious career. But you spoke of starting maybe before you were ready and having to start because the person in front of you was injured. How long did it take for you to adapt and just get comfortable with the surroundings?
That is a gradual process. You know, I think my freshman year was hard. I was very emotional, made a billion freshman mistakes, especially starting in the SEC was hard. But by the end of freshman year, I was ready. You know, we went to the NCAA tournament after the team had missed it the year before I got there. And we played well. We lost on a last-second shot in the second round, but you could see that our team had grown so much and that our team was going to be really good after returning so many key pieces the next year. So it's all the process, and I did struggle initially, just being a freshman, dealing with it all. But I've always learned the quickest that way. And I think many of us do. A lot of times God will put us in situations that we're not quite ready for so that we can grow into them. And I think that was definitely an example of that. And we just have to work as hard as we possibly can every single day, putting one foot in front of the other. You know, it was one practice at a time. It was one weight session at a time. It was one film session at a time. And realizing that, you know, this role may have been too big for me at the beginning, but I was going to rise to the occasion. I was going to grow into it. And I would say I did that fairly quickly.
Your college career, you have a lot to be proud of, and I'm sure you look back on it fondly. You had Jim Foster your first 3 years, and then I think he moved to Ohio State, or maybe that came later. But your senior year, you have a coaching change, but your team, always competitive. You reached the NCAA tournament every year, made it to 2 Elite Eights, and with that goal you set of breaking the all-time scoring record, as you got closer to that mark and when you passed it, what did that mean for you? How significant was that moment to etch your name in Vanderbilt women's basketball lore?
That the word lore. I love that.
I mean, funny. You are though. The website has a page listing all of your accomplishments.
No, it's just funny. Like, but I think honestly, when I broke the record by 2 points. So Wendy Schulten's scoring record was 2,602 points, and there was no one else who had even gotten close to it. And so we knew that I was kind of getting close to it, but I ended up scoring 2,604 points. So I broke it in an overtime game, the last game of my career, senior year, and we lost. And it was the end of my career at Vanderbilt. So it was like, in the moment, it was a very bittersweet thing because I was devastated that my college career was over with. Like, I was devastated that we had just lost. And I didn't know I broke the record until after the game when we did media and they told me I broke it. And I was like, oh okay.
So. Yeah, that is an awkward contrast of all the moments, of all the possibilities that comes, and I get how you would feel that way because the tournament, it's always hard when you lose in the NCAA tournament because you know that's the end of your season and no one likes to lose. I know you certainly didn't. But yeah. What did you enjoy most about your time as a college basketball athlete? You got to play in the NCAA tournament all 4 years, so you got a lot of exposure. You set the goal of breaking the all-time scoring record. You did, even though it didn't have the storybook surroundings I think you were hoping for, but everything you set out to do, you were able to achieve. When you look back on that, what did you enjoy most from your time in the black and gold?
Yeah, man, Vanderbilt was such a beautiful experience, and it prepared me for the WNBA. I met I had the best coaches. Like, I hear so many people who they're recruited under one premise and then something else happens when they get there. And I will say that my coaches recruited me ethically and honestly. And when I got there, it turned out how we all had hoped. And so I was very grateful for that. The thing that I can say the most and what I'm most grateful for is the fact that Vanderbilt, and even to an extent playing in the WNBA, it prepared me for life. Since retiring from basketball, I have coached college basketball and recruited. I jumped into medical device sales for 4 years. I have run my own business, my own speaking business for 3.5 years. And now I am also in the ministry as far as that. And I absolutely love all of these different stops at my career. And what Vanderbilt and basketball in general has prepared me for is to just be successful at anything else I have wanted to do. As long as I apply the lessons that I learned there, I'll be good, and that's one thing that I've learned. Transferable skills always transfer. And I had the best coaching and the best opportunities and the best education at Vanderbilt. And then going to the WNBA, the same thing, the highest level of competition in the world. And so, now what I'm doing in terms of writing books and speaking and ministry, it's so fulfilling. I actually have a call with my mentee in 8 minutes, and I'm really excited about, like, I love pouring into young women and helping them live better lives. But basketball prepared me for that, and because I get to pass on all of the lessons that I learned through it. So I'm just really grateful.
I'll leave you with this. Where can people find you if they want to explore some of the things you've been doing, whether it's your book writings, your speeches? How can people get a hold of you if they want to know more?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I just wrote a book of devotionals. It's called God, What the Heck? 100 devotionals for when life sucks. And you can find that at godwhattheheck.com. And I'm always on Instagram. So you can find me at Miss Chantelle on Instagram. And also my main website is Confidently His. So all of that is how they can find me.
Well, I'm glad we got to share a little bit about you, and I hope this won't be the last time we hear more about your story. But I'm glad to hear some of these anecdotes, and I can't wait to follow up. Perhaps next time you'll have another 5 or 10 more things you've added to your resume.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, Chantelle Anderson, hopefully we'll learn more about her story, but as she said, plenty of ways to find her if you want to explore more from this former basketball professional athlete and speaker, author, you name it, Chantelle will find a way to add it to the resume. And if you want to be a guest on a future episode of this podcast, just contact us on social media at the Mike Keaton on Twitter or Instagram. All you need is a good story, and we'd be happy to share it. So until next time, thanks for watching.